Neil, do you have a question?
I do. How genuinely aware are all candidates of the impact that large numbers of very vulnerable families moving out from London into the town has had on local infrastructure such as schools and hospitals, and what are you actually going to do to mitigate against that in the future?
Laura, would you like to make that question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Neil. It is a huge problem. I've met with quite a few families living in Terminus House, and they're really struggling. I mean, I met with one mother, she had 3 adult sons living with her, and in the daytime they move their mattresses into the corridor because they don't have the space. Lots of people are really suffering through stress and depression. I spoke to another head teacher of a primary school in Harlow, and some of her students were living out on industrial estates, I think around Templefields. And she said that the biggest reason for poor attendance at her school was because these children were living really in the middle of nowhere with no infrastructure and no bus service to get them to school. So actually, the children just miss out. So I find it absolutely heartbreaking, to be honest, because I hear from lots of people who aren't quite aware of actually how bad the situation is, that these people come from outside of Harlow and they're getting housed and they're bringing their problems with them. But these are really vulnerable people, and they are away from their support systems as well, so we need to be mindful of that. The legislation for permitted developments is conservative legislation. In 2013, I think there was changes made there, and it was under Liberal Democrats as well. We would reverse that legislation, so we will no longer exist under a Labour government. We want proper housing for people, decent housing, not old office blocks that have been turned into units. I feel really embarrassed for our town that we have that, and unfortunately it is down to the Conservative government. So,
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Neil, for that question on permitted development rights. It is an incredibly important question. The first thing I would say is that this legislation was actually brought through in the Parliament unanimously, and not one party opposed that legislation. There was no vote on it. The reason why there was no vote on it was because people thought that actually we do need extra housing. It was a good idea to build office accommodation that wasn't being used properly for extra houses. And actually, if you look at the old Pearson building, for example, that is a lot of that is under permitted development rights, and that is quality housing. Now, the next thing I would say is the big problem we've had, and if you look at all the freedom of information requests that I have done, is that a vast majority of the people there are London Labour councils who are socially cleansing their own vulnerable residents. There was no vote on it. There was never ever any vote on it.
But you didn't.
No, it was not opposed by any party. No one imagined.
Can you just let the candidate answer please first?
They don't want to hear the truth. They don't like the fact that Labour councils are sending their vulnerable families to Harlow because they live in their own areas. Yes, it's true. It is absolutely true. Now, the next thing about it is that what I don't understand, and I've met with residents countless times who are suffering, particularly in Terminus House, and I've met with the landlords and had a letter from them, is they offered those houses to Harlow Council, all of the blocks in that Terminus House and other areas, to Harlow Council. I don't know why Harlow Council didn't accept that offer. I was also told by somebody senior in Harlow Council that Terminus House was offered to Harlow Council for just £1. It was just £1. And what I think there needs to be is an independent investigation as to what happened with Terminus House, why this wasn't quality building, quality houses in Terminus House, quality buildings, and we should work together, all parties, to try and solve this problem. But the first thing is to stop Labour councils sending their residents from their areas in London to Harlow. Because, and that is why I've met with the government, with the leader of the council, who's reviewing how community development legislation works. We need to have quality housing. It has gone wrong in parts, and I'm doing my best to try and stop it.
I find it quite shocking, and I agree, shameful, how we're expecting these families to live. And it is just because the current government doesn't have the political will to do something about it. All we need to do is make sure that local authorities are given adequate funding and asked to build proper council housing to a minimum, at least a minimum standard, and that minimum standard should include things about the amount of space and insulation and solar energy and things like that. And they should be told they must build it at least to those minimum standards and ideally to better standards, and they should be given the money, and we should be looking to house these people. As I said at the beginning, we did that after the war. We were in debt up to our eyeballs. We couldn't feed people properly, we couldn't clothe people properly, but we found the will and the way and the money to build decent, good quality houses with lots of green space and sculpture. We can do it again, we must do it again, and that's why the Liberal Democrats are absolutely determined to massively increase the amount of council housing that gets built. Because council housing gives families secure homes at a rent they can afford. It allows those people to bring up those families, become part of the community, and to really make a proper life and know that they're secure and they're safe and they can afford the rent. And the fact that we haven't done that for decades, and frankly it isn't just the Tories, the Labour government didn't build much council housing either. The fact that we haven't done it for decades is truly shameful, and there are people now living in Terminus House in terrible conditions because we as a nation have not got round to building the housing of the quality that we need, and Liberal Democrats in government absolutely would do that.
Thank you very much.